We all carry ghosts, don't we? Not the kind that rattle chains in the night, but the specters of our own choices. The people we used to be, looking back at the people we've become, with pity or with shame. This isn't a story about a monster. It's a story about a good man. A kind man. The kind of man who remembered anniversaries, who made soup when you were sick, whose laugh could fill a room. His name was Alex. And this is the story of how in one single, fleeting, catastrophic moment, he threw it all away. It's a story he'd give anything to forget, but the memory is etched into him, a permanent scar on his soul. He doesn't seek sympathy. He knows he deserves none. He only speaks this truth into the silence, a cautionary tale wrapped in a confession. This is the story of a man who had everything, and who, with his own hands, broke it. And he has lived with the echo of that shattering every single day since. 5 years ago, Alex's life was not just good. It was vibrant. It was a masterpiece he'd been lucky enough to help paint. At its center was Sarah. To describe Sarah as just beautiful was to describe the ocean as just wet. She had a light that came from within, a kindness that was as practical as it was profound. She was the one who remembered to call your mother on her birthday, who always had an extra blanket for a guest, whose quiet strength was the bedrock of their world. She was a writer, her mind a labyrinth of wonderful stories. Alex would often find her curled on their worn-in sofa, a blanket over her legs, a cup of tea going cold on the table as she scribbled in a notebook, lost in a world of her own creation. And Alex adored her. He was a carpenter, a man who found truth in the grain of wood, in the solidity of something he built with his own hands. He had built his life with Sarah, and it was the most beautiful thing he'd ever made. Their home was a testament to their love. It was filled with his handmade furniture, a solid oak dining table, bookshelves that bowed slightly under the weight of her novels, and her touches, fresh flowers on the mantelpiece, photographs of their travels, the scent of lavender and vanilla that was uniquely her. They had rituals, Sunday morning pancakes, arguing good-naturedly over crossword clues, the way she'd rest her icy feet on his warm legs in bed, and he'd pretend to complain but would never, ever move away. He remembers one evening vividly. They were on that same sofa, a fire crackling in the hearth. She was reading a passage from her latest story to him, her voice a soft melody. He watched the firelight play on her face, saw the passion in her eyes, and a thought, clear and certain, settled in his heart. This is all I will ever need. It was a perfect, crystalline moment of contentment. He didn't know, then, that he was already holding the memory that would forever torture him. But life, as it does, began to change. Routines can become ruts if you're not careful. The passionate, can't keep our hands off each other phase of their relationship had mellowed into a deep, comfortable love. And for Alex, a small, insidious part of him began to mistake that comfort for boredom. It started with a restlessness. The quiet evenings that once felt like sanctuary began to feel quiet. The stories Sarah shared started to feel like familiar tales he'd already heard. He missed the adrenaline of the new, the thrill of the unknown. He was like a man on a steady, nourishing diet, suddenly craving junk food. This was around the time a new client, Chloe, came into his workshop. She was the polar opposite of Sarah. Loud where Sarah was quiet, boldly flirtatious where Sarah was respectfully warm. She was commissioning a custom desk, and her appointments were always late in the day. She'd lean against the workbench, her perfume a sharp, exotic flower in the air of sawdust and varnish, and she'd talk. She talked about wild parties, spontaneous trips, a life that seemed to Alex like a series of exciting, disconnected sparks. She was a novelty, and Alex, in his foolishness, mistook novelty for value. He found himself thinking about her during the day. He started dressing a little better on the days he knew she was coming in. He'd laugh a little too hard at her jokes. He was teetering on the edge of a very, very steep cliff, and he was admiring the view. His best friend, Mike, a man who'd known him since college, saw the shift. Mike, whoa there, Casanova. New cologne? Are you seeing someone else? Your woodshop lady. Alex, don't be an idiot, Mike. She's just a client. It's called professionalism. Mike, right? Professionalism that requires you to smell like a French forest. Come on, man. You have Sarah. Sarah, don't be the guy who trades in a gold coin for a handful of flashy pennies. But Alex wasn't listening. The whisper of discontent had become a voice, and it was telling him he was missing out. He was so busy looking at the green grass on the other side. He failed to notice he was standing in a field of emeralds. The trap was set not by Chloe, but by his own arrogance, by the belief that he deserved more, that he was entitled to a taste of that chaotic, exciting life, without any of the cost. The cost was coming, and it would be everything. The night it happened was unremarkable. Sarah was away for a weekend, visiting her sister a few states over. She called him that afternoon, her voice bright and happy. Sarah, I miss you already. The bed's too big without you. I brought you back that maple syrup from the farmer's market you like. I'll be home Sunday night. Alex, I miss you too, sweetheart. Drive safe. He meant it when he said it, but the emptiness of the house felt oppressive. The silence was no longer peaceful. It was accusing. That's when a text from Chloe lit up his phone. Chloe, a bunch of us are at the Gilded Anchor. Boredom is a sin. You in? It was a siren's call. He argued with himself for an hour. It's just drinks with a client. With friends. Mike is overreacting. I'm in control. He was not in control. He went. The bar was dark and loud. Chloe was there, dazzling in the dim light. She bought him a whiskey, then another. The conversation was easy, laced with double entendres. He felt seen, exciting, alive in a way he hadn't in years. He was Alex, the desirable carpenter, not Alex, Sarah's dependable boyfriend. The details of the night became a blur, a pleasant, intoxicating blur. The decision to leave the bar, the offer to share a cab, the moment outside her apartment building, the city lights swimming in his vision. CHLOE, you coming up? One more drink. And in that moment, the good man, the man who loved Sarah, was silenced. The selfish, curious, entitled man took the wheel. Alex, one drink. What's the harm? I deserve this. Sarah will never know. It's just one night. He nodded. He followed her inside. The act itself was nothing. It was empty. It was mechanics without soul, a transaction without meaning. The moment it was over, lying in a stranger's bed, the whiskey fog evaporated and the horror rushed in. It was a cold, gut-wrenching, soul-shriveling wave of pure regret. He looked at the woman sleeping next to him, and all he saw was a monument to his own stupidity. He had traded a single, fleeting thrill for the sacred trust of the woman he loved. He had become a cliché. He dressed in the dark, his hands shaking so badly he could barely button his shirt. He stumbled out of the apartment and vomited in the alley outside, purging nothing that truly mattered. He had already been poisoned. The drive home was a waking nightmare. Every streetlight was an accusing eye. He walked back into his silent, perfect home, and it felt like a crime scene. He saw Sarah's sweater draped over a chair, and his knees almost buckled. The smell of her lavender candle made him want to scream. He took a shower, scrubbing at his skin until it was raw, trying to wash away the scent of Chloe's perfume, the feel of her sheets. But the stain wasn't on his skin, it was on his soul. When Sarah returned Sunday night, her arms full of groceries and that promised bottle of maple syrup, her smile was a knife in his heart. Sarah, Alex, I missed you. She hugged him, and he flinched. He felt like a liar, a fraud wearing the skin of her loving boyfriend. Alex, missed you too. How was the trip? And so began the prison sentence. The lie became a third person in their relationship, a ghost that only he could see. It stood between them at the dinner table. It lay in bed with him at night, when he'd stare at the ceiling, the guilt of physical weight on his chest. He became a shell. He was overly attentive, buying her gifts she didn't ask for, doing chores without being prompted, desperate, pathetic attempts to balance some cosmic scale. But his eyes were dead. The easy laughter was gone, replaced by a tense, watchful silence. Sarah noticed, of course. She was a writer. She studied people for a living. Sarah, Alex, are you okay? You seem distant. Is something wrong at work? You could talk to me. Alex, no, I'm fine. Just tired. A big project. It's nothing. He saw the confusion and hurt in her eyes, and it killed him. He was hurting her by staying silent, and he knew confessing would destroy her. He was trapped in a hell of his own making. This went on for 2 months. 60 days of exquisite torture. The guilt was a cancer, eating him from the inside out. He couldn't work. He couldn't eat. He'd look at Sarah, at her goodness, her unwavering trust, and he knew he was the worst kind of person. He was defiling the very thing he claimed to cherish. The weight became unbearable. He finally broke down and told Mike. They were in Mike's garage, the air thick with the smell of oil and regret. Alex, I did it, Mike. I slept with her. The client. I'm a monster. Mike was silent for a long, long time. He didn't offer comfort. He just looked at his friend, his face a mask of disappointment. Mike, what did you expect, Alex? That would feel good? You had everything. Everything. And you threw a hand grenade at it for what? 5 minutes of what? Tell me, was it worth it? Alex, no, God, no. It was the biggest mistake of my life. Mike, so what are you going to do? Alex, I have to tell her. I can't live like this anymore. He decided to tell her that night. He cooked her favorite meal, his hands trembling as he chopped the vegetables. He was setting the stage for an execution. His own. When she came home, she was pleasantly surprised by the dinner. Sarah, oh, this is lovely. What's the occasion? Alex, we need to talk. Those 4 words. He saw the light in her eyes dim, replaced by instant, primal fear. She sat down, her hands folded in her lap, bracing for impact. And he told her. There was no elegant way to say it. He didn't dress it up or make excuses. He just laid the ugly, naked truth at her feet. I cheated on you. 2 months ago, when you were at your sister's. The silence that followed was the most profound sound he had ever heard. It was the sound of a world ending. He watched the emotions play across her face in slow motion. Confusion, denial, and then the devastating dawning of comprehension. The color drained from her face. Her body, which was always so expressive, went utterly still, as if she were conserving energy for a great, coming pain. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at him, and her gaze was no longer one of love or worry, but of a cold, clinical reassessment. She was seeing the real him for the first time. Sarah, who? Alex, it doesn't matter. Sarah, who? He told her. A client. Chloe. She stood up, mechanically, and walked to the kitchen sink. She picked up the bottle of maple syrup she had brought back for him. She looked at it, then at him, and without a word, she dropped it into the trash can. The clatter of glass was deafening. That small, symbolic act broke him more than any scream could have. She then walked to the bedroom. He heard the closet door open, the sound of a suitcase being dragged out. He sat at the table, amidst the uneaten food, and wept. He had given her the truth, and in doing so, he had destroyed them. There was no dramatic, fiery end. There was only a quiet, systematic dismantling. She moved out a week later. The divorce papers came a month after that. She was mercifully, brutally efficient. She didn't want his money. She didn't want the house. She just wanted to be free of him. The last time he saw her, she was loading the final box into her car. She looked at him, and her eyes were no longer filled with hate. They were empty, hollow, and that was infinitely worse. Sarah, goodbye, Alex. And she drove away, taking all the light, all the color, all the music from his world. That was 5 years ago. Alex still lives in the same city, but he lives in a different universe. A grayscale world. He sold the house. He couldn't bear the ghosts. He lives in a small, sterile apartment with none of his own furniture. He goes to work. He comes home. He exists. He heard through the grapevine that Sarah moved to another city. She published a novel. It was a critical success. He bought a copy, but could never bring himself to read it. He was too afraid he'd see a shadow of himself in its pages, the villain of her story. He's dated since. A few kind, wonderful women who saw the sadness in him and mistakenly thought they could fix it. But he could never give them his whole heart, because his heart, the part that knew how to love fully and without reservation, died with his marriage to Sarah. He is a haunted house, and every potential new relationship just echoes with the memory of the life he destroyed. The regret is not a feeling. It's a climate. It's the air he breathes. It's in the quiet of the morning and the loneliness of the night. He doesn't hate himself. That would be too passionate an emotion. He's just weary, profoundly, eternally weary from the weight of his mistake. So why tell this story? Why dig up this pain? It's not for absolution. There is none to be had. He tells it as a warning. A lighthouse beam shining on the rocks he crashed upon. If you are ever in a moment of weakness, looking over the fence at what seems like greener grass, stop. Look down. Look at what you are standing on. True love, true partnership, true trust is not a thrill ride. It's not about constant novelty. It's the deep, quiet, profound peace of sharing your life with someone who truly sees you. It is the most valuable thing you will ever have. And it is fragile. Alex had it all. He held a masterpiece in his hands, and he let it slip through his fingers for a cheap forgery. He is a living ghost, forever haunted by the man he was and the life he could have had. The affair lasted one night. The regret will last a lifetime.